And now we're on the overtime. So something I didn't think about when I was building the shed. So I start off myself, built the box and framed it out right before I actually worked with anyone who's a professional in this area, right? So a good buddy of mine from Central Campus, Clint Gadbury, came after us a good way through and started asking some questions. A few of them were like, for example, what tolerances are you using? And I said, well, I don't know, about a ½ inch, right? And to which he said, you should be doing 1/16. To which I was like, the blade's an eighth of an, an eighth wide. I just thought those marks on the, measuring tape were for, design features. I mean, why would you need a 16th or a 32nd? Good Lord, my pencil can't even do that. So here's the other one, is I realized that insulating corners was difficult. So my innovative solution was, I will actually start my studs at the corner and work towards the middle so that my small area of insulation is in the middle. Brilliant. Until you put sheathing on. And it turns out I hadn't paid a lot of attention to sheathing before, really. And then as I looked at it, I see there's a bunch of lines on it. And I've always wondered, man, I wonder what all the lines are for. I mean, is that part of the manufacturing process? Yada, yada, yada. Turns out there's 16 on center. Turns out when you work from 2 different corners that you then have to figure out, oh, well, now none of these line up. Which, Clint was like, why the hell did you do that? And I was like, well, the insulation went in great. But now that we're shiplap, what it means is I am never going to put too heavy a coat of paint inside because I can use the nail heads to see where all of my studs are. So sort of a problem created, problem solved through a lack of appreciation that there's a lot of brilliant pieces in construction. Just
there are
some smart innovations.
Well, because I'm an architect, when I built my shed, I actually drew every thing out ahead of time so I didn't have to cut the sheathing, because I knew that I did not have the right equipment to cut a 4x8 sheet easily. So I set it up with absolute minimum cutting of the interior sheathing. The exterior sheathing, that was fine. I could trash that. I could have jagged edges and cope with that. But the interior sheathing is just plywood, pickled plywood. So I had to look good without my crappy cutting skills.
My plan is always standard measurements. It just turns out that apparently my tolerances don't allow the standard measurements to actually fit together. So when you're always off a little bit, like he was doing the measuring from corner to corner, it's like, these don't line up at all. I was like, well, I just want them close enough. How close do you think we need this thing? Turns out I was wrong.
I'm standing up, it's fine.
Yeah, and tell you what, man, for this COVID world, this thing is great. I got a 40-foot commute. It's phenomenal. But I am curious on the battery stuff, because the battery stuff is interesting, right? I mean, where do you get your solar panels from? I mean, what is sort of the net effect? Like, there's a lot of these where the chemicals in making the PV is a problem, right? Now that we have the wind, right, the disposing of the blades is a problem. I mean, we have these very interesting life cycle issues. How do you fix that? Like, what are your general thoughts there? I mean, you're mentioning we need better batteries.
Biomimicry. So let's talk about the wind turbine blades, for example. The abalone makes the hardest ceramic known on the planet. And it is made at body temperature with non-toxically with readily available materials. The abalone. So why are we using these funky fiberglass composites that can never be broken down? Whereas if you have a beach full of abalone shells, those will just dissipate and then turn into something new, and given enough time. Like, why are we this is like me and my bookshelf, right? I thought I could do better because I was smart. This is humans thinking, we're smart, so we're going to do better than nature, even though nature has had 3.4 billion years to figure this out. So just, if we need to store energy, how does nature store energy? let's start with that. I know people are working on this. It's just that it's like 5 pay grades above and brain sizes above where I live. But I know people are working on this. But if we don't have a biomimetic solution to energy production as well as energy storage, we're only going to make it so far.
To be fair, on the issue of nature perfecting it, nature also perfected our human brains, which ended up with us believing we could do better than nature. So nature may not have all of it.
No, well, nature's had a whole series of colossal failures too.
Lots of innovative failures there.
That's right, they have. I mean, it's not that nature is perfect, that's for sure, but we can at least be a little wiser in using basically our research materials that are available to us all around us. And it may turn out that our energy and battery solutions are vary according to climate. I don't know, I'm not smart enough for that, but I do recognize that we're not just facing a climate change problem, we're facing an ecosystem collapse problem, and we've got to address both of those. So we've got to draw down our emissions, but we also have to recognize the fact that we are dramatically, our extractive economy, as a result of the rich people having 9 cookies, is causing these problems that have these ripple effects, not only in terms of equity of our society, but also in terms of respect for the natural world. So we got to deal with the cookie problem, and we got to deal with the ecosystem problem. Otherwise, things are going to fall apart in a hurry.
I know we've worked on discussing sort of the water usage, water reduction pieces. I mean, how is that going in Johnson County? I mean, right now, because there's a lot of small. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Is that a?
What do you mean? How is it going in Johnson County? What would you like to see going?
Well, I just meant I thought that your group was actually systematically going through and helping people implement water reduction shower heads, faucets, those sort of things. I mean, how effective are those types of programs? Are they working? Is the one that you're working on, is it starting to move the needle where you are locally? I mean, is it succeeding?
COVID-19 put a wrench in our plans. Like, we were actually literally going to do our first 25 homes in May, like right now. And no one's going to let us in our home. The other challenge we ran into, so I put in a low flow. So here I am, this green person, and it turns out that I have 2.5 GPM shower. I have 2.2 at the kitchen sink. Like, I didn't even do what I said I wasn't even practicing what I preached. So I started with me, and I called my plumber to do it for me. And like, literally, I spent 2 hours back and forth on the phone and email with them to try and get me the right thing. And I wound up just going online and buying the right thing because they couldn't figure it out. And I was like, this is literally your job. To help people like fix and upgrade their plumbing, and you can't get me the right parts. So that's these are the human aspects that are impeding our ability to move forward. And so that's one of, there's the pandemic part, but there's also the basic fundamental fact of just getting the right piece of equipment in the right place.
What do you think is impeding that? Like with in our capitalist, 9+ cookie world, business is often just about, here's a simple thing I can do. I'm going to do a lot more of it at less cost, and I'm going to keep going over and over and over and over, right? And there's always an interesting chicken and egg piece of how much demand do you need before that repetitive process becomes one that enables your toilet. I mean, how much demand do we need before all of a sudden you're able to call the plumber and they're like, oh yeah, I know this one, we installed 10 of them.
Well, and I'm guessing it's probably about 2 dozen per plumbing contractor. So let me put it this way. So if my plumber had 2 dozen customers say, we want low flow aerators we want you to do a low flow upgrade to our house. And they had 2 dozen customers in a row make that request. They would figure out what I figured out, which is you can actually buy an aerator kit that has like the 20 most common standards, and you can just try them out and figure out which ones fit. And lo and behold, after you do that a couple times, you usually get the right one on the first or second try because you've seen enough and paid attention. And honestly, I think literally 24 would be enough for each plumbing contractor to be like, I know how to do this. And it may only take 10, right? It really wouldn't be that far of a bridge to cross. It's just the issue is no one ever asks that question. No one's ever saying, give me low flow aerator inserts. The conversation fundamentally isn't happening. And I think a very small number of people asking that question would be plenty to shift the market.
That's quite interesting. I mean, like, I agree with that. It probably is a really low number. I mean, between 10 to 24 out of like the Iowa City area is, I mean, I would say is what, 70,000 in
Each
Iowa
plumber.
City. Yeah.
For each company, right? Because each company is going to have to learn that same thing for themselves. Now, they might talk to Bob at the bar and learn about it from him, but chances are pretty high. They're pretty narrowly, people are in their own little worlds, and they're not going to talk to each other about aerators. So every company has to go through this.
As a quick aside, I took a call yesterday from a guy we work with who was actually named Bob. He's a building engineer in San Diego. He is retiring, but he's known he's retiring for a year, and he had to tell the boss I'm retiring, so she had time to find the right person. And the parameter that I didn't realize he must have put into it was that you had to replace him with another Bob. So I got to have a call with the Bobs at a building in San Diego. But it is a pretty high probability get a Bob who knows something about building engineering, because it's either that or Rick. So, sorry for my side. The one thing I've always wanted to see, though, with regards to storage, is kinetic art. It's like, I feel like in the city of Des Moines, we could put a big pole in front. You put some big old heavy piece of artwork, and all day the motor brings it up, and at the end of the day it just brings it down. So you can actually see the thing going. Oh, I'm sorry. At night you bring it up, and then during the day it comes down. So all day you'd see just this floating artwork at different stages of making energy usage visible for everyone.
That'd be cool.
Sounds like an architecture project. We could get...
Not my architecture project.
You're not sold yet.
No.
I'll put it on our next call.
I'm a pretty pragmatic person. Artist for other people.
What's that?
Artist for other people.
Yeah, but it's going on our next MLab call.
And I pay for it and I buy it, but I'm just not going to be doing it myself. I endorse it. I just won't do it.
When we say that we need to make sure the rich only have the right number of cookies, right? How rich is rich? Like what is equitable as you're looking at it? Like how do we achieve equitability? How do we define it? Like how do we know we're getting there?
Well, that's a really big question.
I don't want to ask small ones. If you've got time, I got to use it.
I think it becomes a matter of, and a lot of people that ask this question, what are the basic human rights? What are our basic needs? Food, shelter, healthcare, probably education. What does it cost to provide that to someone? That's your baseline. And I think the metric of no one should make 100 times their lowest paid person what is it 100 times? Is it 20 times? I'd be comfortable with saying if you're paying yourself more than 20 times your lowest paid person, you're a disrespectful human being. Like, that's just fundamentally wrong to me. Like there's no, like that's just wrong. Like you should respect the person who's cleaning your house or growing your food or picking your strawberries enough that you shouldn't want to earn more than 20 times as much as them. What kind of jerk are you?
It's always interesting in those is like when we talk about human rights, I mean, some of them just seem like, is it a right to have it? Or is it their essentially responsibility of the haves that I feel like in a lot of ways we've lost a lot of the responsibility that comes with prosperity. Like if we're doing well, we've cut out the other side that you're responsible for those who aren't doing as well, or you cut out, I mean, I always think about the multiplier of, um, are you really doing something with this hour that it would take 234 people to do? Like, can can we really not find less than 234 people to actually provide your unit of value here? Um, I think John McDonald from McDonnell Douglas is the one I think I understood back in um, the 60s and 70s, where he capped top end pay, capped his pay at 20 times janitor. Right, janitor was at the bottom, which I guess isn't probably the way we should be looking at if we want our places clean and safe anymore. But
Right? Yes.
but they had 20x cap.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
But I often wonder, it seems like it gets into the environmental pieces. The other piece is like, is that a right, or is it really a responsibility of the other side? Like, how do we actually, um, have we framed some of these things effectively enough to allow people to know that they should do them versus they need to do them? And is it better to be a should versus a need?
Well, I think recent days have shown us that some people are fine with the should, but some people have to be told they need to, they must. Stay home. Don't spit on people in public. Like,
Were you doing that pre-COVID? I mean, is this what was?
spit, but you sneeze and you don't cover your mouth and you don't wash your hands. Like, in theory, we all knew that we should do this. And yet you still have people who are behaving in repugnant and disrespectful ways because of their personal rights. Like, I feel like, as soon as Kim Reynolds lifted some restrictions, people went out and started acting stupid. Like, I think some people have to be told what they must do. I just think that sometimes you just have to have rules. Obligation and responsibility are not enough for the entire populace. And in our current culture, let me clarify that. Could we have some utopia where people could actually be better human beings and like decide on their own to be decent? I hope so, but right now, no.
Did we ever have that? Like, you suppose, like, are we in a worse place now with respect to those responsibility and responsibility versus prosperity, or like, you suppose it's always been like this?
I think it's always been like this. I think scarcity breeds greed. And as long as you have people who are, fighting over that half of a cookie, and ignoring the fact that someone else is hoarding all 9.5, we're gonna have conflict. I mean, I think some of it is fundamentally just setting some rules about people, making some decisions about equity and codifying it.
I do find it amazing that there is actually, with our production potential, that there is even access to scarcity. Like, that in some ways blows my mind. Like, the idea that we can produce so much food, yet we can't actually get it to people who actually need it. The fact that we can't provide baseline living, right? You look at the United Way's ALICE metric, right, of survivability. It sort of blows my mind that we can't. And I guess I say that quasi-facetiously, because I think it really is a choice that we're choosing not to provide even access to the survivability level of resources, right? Those pieces, I guess, we're saying we need to, in a way, make them rights in order to ensure they get them. My curiosity is that, I find the evangelical offenders, the Oral Roberts offenders, are the most intriguing, right? The ones that identify that the Earth's resources are able to be used up and not remain for the next.
I'm not going to take that bait.
Everyone knows Oral Roberts is the downfall of society. It's just proven fact.
There are some people who use morality as cover for their immorality. I just happened to grow up in a Christian household where we actually talked about what Jesus did and said that was good. And so that informs my life. Be a decent human being, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, yeah, it's very basic, but that's the way I function.
I knew there was a reason you're such a crazy liberal hippie. Jesus.
Have you ever seen The Good Place?
What's that?
Have you seen The Good Place?
I've not watched enough of it. I've seen a few episodes and I've loved it. I've just never stuck it out.
Well, it took me a while to get into it, but there's a philosopher in there, and one of the things that comes up is, you can't just buy an apple anymore and be innocent. Like, where did the apple come from? Who picked it? What chemicals were used to produce it? How did it get there? Like, you can't just walk out to your yard and get an apple anymore. Like, there's so much baggage attached to every choice we make. So even though I might say, do unto others if you would have them do unto you, and I buy organic and I do these liberal things, but I don't actually know all the intricacies of the clothes I buy, all the ripple effects of what I do. I know I am actually technically globally in the 1%. So it is inevitable that things that I'm doing are actually harming other people. But there's like kind of this limit, and The Good Place gets into this. It's like, at some point, you're just like, it's like you can't, like the brain can't process all that. And I'm not saying we should rip apart all of our global systems, but perhaps there is harvesting something in Italy to ship it to China, to ship it to Brazil, to put it in a car that I buy in Iowa is fundamentally flawed. Like, maybe there's some fundamental flaws in our system.
Seth Watkins, who was one of our first ones, actually had an interesting point about community meat lockers. We don't have community meat lockers, we're not butchers anymore. His curiosity of whether or not this pandemic is going to be able to bring those types of what's fundamentally local manufacturing, for lack of a better term, but it's local skilled labor. You can't find a butcher, I don't know, outside of Fairway anymore.
Right.
It'd be interesting if this is able to actually sort of, I'm not necessarily opposed to globalization in general. I guess I'm opposed to global inequity. I mean, we're going to these other places on balance of the transport logistics costs being less than the imbalance in labor costs. It's almost like there needs to be sort of a global minimum wage. But the other problem is, what is the minimum cost of living in some of these other places?
Well, I'm sure someone who studies colonialism would have a lot to say about our current economic situation. I would imagine that there are a lot of, I imagine you would see a thread of colonialism that is continuing today in terms of how we export our means of production.
Luckily,
But I'm not smart enough to really go into that. That was a teaser.
I was gonna say, yeah, we're gonna find someone else for the colonialism rabbit hole.
You
But,
are. It's not me.
I've
But
got a few.
it is an interesting question.
Well, I think it's a massive.
But I guess
think it's theirs.
you asked me, if I could just, if money were an issue, what would I do tomorrow? Like, these big global questions, I can't handle that, right? I know what I can do in my world with the resources in my culture that are available to me, and that is my skill set. And I just, I can't solve that stuff out there. I can't solve supply chain issues, but I can address local culture. I can address the way we choose to live and value things within our neighborhoods. Like that I can affect. I can grow native plants to support habitat. I can reduce, fossil fuel consumption locally. I can localize water production and processing. Like I can do those things. So I'm sticking with what I can do, because once I start to think globally, it just hurts my head too much, and I can't actually do anything about it. It's just an emotional trauma.
I want to hit education for a quick minute, but I almost just want to be like, dude, that's the best summary of sort of inspiring position, right? Obviously not the global trauma, but just being able to say, this is what I can do, and let's figure out a process forward, and let's actually get it done. Well, speaking of getting next things done, I know we're both sitting on timelines anyway. However, and otherwise we'll go into rabbit holes for days, as you know, from me ruining other USGPC meetings. However, thank you very, very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll be able to solve batteries soon.
I hope so. I hope some smart person does that.
And if not, kinetic art. I'm gonna push my kinetic art.
There we go. Go for it. Well, thanks, Chris. It's been interesting to see what people have to say and their perspectives, so it's fun.
Well, thanks for joining us. See you soon.
Bye.